You guys know the drill already. If you hate the Ravens, you hate the Bengals, or you hate the Steelers, really simple, like the video to start today's show. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here on a Friday where we don't have a ton out there right now. You know what I mean? There's no new developments on the Baker Mayfield front, really. So I figured it'd be fun just to have a conversation about where will Baker end up between this race of Carolina versus the Seattle Seahawks, because it seems like that is what it has ultimately come down to, right? A late push from Seattle recently, and they've shown some interest, so we're going to look at that. But we'll start things off by making the case for both teams. First, we'll address the Panthers, all right, and why it makes sense, or maybe why it doesn't make sense for them to trade for Baker Mayfield, and then we'll do the same for the Seahawks. But let's start by getting a nice pros and cons sheet out for the Carolina Panthers, like right, looking at it from their point of view. The pros, Baker's a clear upgrade over Sam Darnold and Matt Corral. We'll show the stats again, but it shouldn't be much of a conversation to be had. Matt Rhule, his honeymoon is over, okay? Coming over from Baylor, a lot of high hopes, big expectations, and last year, as offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, I believe, he gets canned, so that doesn't reflect well on Matt Rhule. It wasn't a pretty season last year up in Charlotte, so I think Matt Rhule is running out of time, and he needs a quarterback that can help keep his job, and Sam Darnold ain't that guy. Now, since 2018, the Panthers only have 22 wins as a team. Baker, meanwhile, as a starter since entering the league in 2018, has 29. So it's pretty obvious that Baker can come in there, help win some ball games, and if I'm Matt Rhule, help keep my job. Now, the cons for trading for Baker. You've already got a quarterback with an identical contract. Sam Darnold, who was drafted in 2018 like Baker, is on the fifth-year option right now, and he's going to make just south of $19 million, 100% guaranteed, just like Baker Mayfield. So you don't really want two quarterbacks with that kind of paycheck. Now, the Browns could eat some of Baker's money, but still, to have an $18.9 million backup quarterback isn't all that appetizing to Scott Fritterer, the GM in Carolina. They also missed on the Darnold trade, all right? Remember last year, Carolina sends over, looking back, was a king's ransom for Sam Darnold. And if you're the GM, Scott Fritterer of the Panthers, do you want to make the same mistake twice? You want to go down on a ship of this 2018 draft pick is going to be the guy that keeps me in my job? I don't know. They also don't have a third-round pick in the 2023 draft, and I only note that because it kind of feels like if Baker's going to go for a pick, a second seems too high, a fourth seems too low, a third is just right, something the Panthers don't have. Overall, Carolina feels the most logical spot, all right? They just saw last year that Sam Darnold isn't it. Sure, there's he got hurt his shoulder, had some things that weren't against him, but when he was out there at the end of the day, he did not look like a franchise starting quarterback, and he might be on the road to being a lifelong backup. Kind of like Geno Smith coming out of the Jets, former first-round pick, just didn't work out. Again, head-to-head, there's no competition. Baker Mayfield, much better at football. Sam Darnold, much better at making out with girls during the season and picking up mono. This is not a one-way fight. This is a very clear and obvious tilting towards Baker. He is a better quarterback. So now I look at the Panthers GM, Scott Fritterer. Will he risk his job for Baker Mayfield? Because if you don't get the quarterback position right, you don't have a job. That's just how it works in the NFL. You get one or two chances, and he already has strike one and kind of strike two, in my opinion, on Sam Darnold. So if he goes out on a limb and gets Baker, and the Panthers have a bad season this year, he's likely gone, right? It's likely viewed as you missed on Sam Darnold, you missed on Baker, and maybe Matt Corral even plays some this year and doesn't look good, so you missed on that draft pick. So does he want to go with the hip with Baker? So that's where I kind of wonder about where the Panthers view Baker as, just like not even the Panthers, the GM, because that's really all that matters when it comes to whose opinion matters the most. So what does Fritterer think about Baker? Does he want to go down sinking with Baker? Speaking of Baker, I just want to take a second here to have an honest discussion right now about, sure, he's been getting some heat lately, and maybe he is not what a lot of us would have hoped he would have been, but he still provided some great moments for the Browns, right? Can we all agree that Without Baker, that team does not win a playoff game. I'm not saying he's the reason they won the playoff game, but if there's a different quarterback there, I don't think this team that team goes and beats Pittsburgh on the road. So what was your favorite Baker moment? Let me know down below in the comments section. Next up on the show, we'll be making the case for the Seattle Seahawks and why it might or might not make sense for them to trade for Baker, and ultimately where I predict Baker will end up going. But first, we're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers here at the Browns Report, and I need your help. And here's my promise. When we get to 10K subs, I will do a video outlining 10 reasons why the Browns will win the AFC North. So if that is something you'd be interested in, because who wouldn't want to see that content? You know what I mean? Whether it happens or not, let me just gas up the Browns for 20 minutes and talk about why they're going to beat the crap out of the Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers. So help us reach that milestone. Make sure you subscribe today. That way we can get to 10K subs and you can get the content you are looking for. So there were some reports that came out. Let's just start the Seattle conversation with this. Reports came out that they are not only have a high level of interest in Baker Mayfield, according to CBS Sports' Josina Anderson, but they're open to extending Baker, which at first I didn't gravitate towards enough. But who talks about extending a player that's not even on their team yet? I mean, to me, that almost sounds like it's a foregone conclusion. They want him. The next question is, do they want him long term, which is, a little bit ahead of your skis right now. But let's go back to our pros and cons list. The pros for taking Baker in Seattle. Again, an upgrade. Baker is better than Drew Lock. Baker is better than Geno Smith. The Seahawks roster, by the way, I know it doesn't have Russell Wilson anymore, but it's got talent. You've got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. You drafted Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State. There are a lot of good pieces on the Seattle roster. So Baker might be a nice plug and chug and just, make your way through the year. Also, Pete Carroll, we know he does not want Russ to cook, right? We all witnessed that for years. With Baker, that could be a nice duo because Baker is very good at play action. In fact, we'll look at some play action stats in a little bit. But this would be an offense that would fit Baker quite well. Financially, it's very easy. Drew Lock is on his rookie deal making like $1.5 million this year. Geno Smith has a heavy incentive-based contract, but when you combine their contracts, it's about $5 million. So they could absolutely, have a third quarterback on their books. Now, as for the cons, doesn't it kind of feel like, now I'm kind of like Jekyll and Hyde in myself, but Seattle, after trading away Russell Wilson, this quarterback draft class sucked. They didn't go even think about picking a QB this year. Maybe they're just eyeing next year, and they just got to get through this year until they can get Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. They also didn't have much interest initially in Baker, which is maybe a sign of smoke screens, or they didn't like him, and now they're trying to talk themselves into liking him, but at the end of the day, they might revert back to how they felt in March and April. As for financial side of things here, they only have $16.3 million in cap space, so they would need some help from the Browns to alleviate some of Baker's contract just to make it work. But if they really wanted Baker, the cap's fake, they would make it work. Now, here's my kind of a little TED Talk right now about Seattle. They don't have Russell Wilson anymore, so they're not supposed to be good this year. But are they a dark horse to make some noise? When I was scripting out this video and whatnot, thinking about the Seahawks, I was thinking this is going to be one of the worst teams in football. Maybe they don't want to get Baker, so that way they can secretly tank, right? A little tanking operation and get Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. But then I talked to myself a little bit more and was talking to producer Marshall about the Seahawks. And, Pete Carroll and John Schneider, they don't want to tank because they'll get fired. So they're not interested in that. And they might look at the rest of their division right now and realize there might be a path for them. The Rams, what if they get a Super Bowl hangover? It happens. You know what I mean? It just does. So just don't rule that out. The Cardinals, we have learned after Week 10, Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury just don't fare well in the cold weather. They could fold down the stretch. And with the 49ers, you have no idea what to expect from Trey Lance. What if Trey Lance just sucks? What if he is not the guy? And so if the Seahawks look at the roster right now, which has talent, Metcalf and Lockett, and you add Baker, and then they watch this video and realize we might actually have an avenue in a weak conference in the NFC, and maybe an NFC West that isn't, it's all bark, no bite. Now, we're going to check out more stats from this in just a second, but the NBA draft is in the books, and I wish I could pronounce the Cavs pick, but I'm not going to even try to attempt it. But he sounds like a good player, senior out of Kansas. But Eddie, NBA free agency is the next thing up on the calendar. And here at Chat Sports, we will be covering it live. So make sure you watch over at youtube.com/chatsportstv to get the best NBA free agency coverage. Doesn't look like Colin Sexton's on the move anymore, so that's good at least. But make sure you join Chat Sports for the best NBA free agency coverage. All right, let's go back to Baker really quickly. I just want to show these stats because these are his career play action stats. They're pretty good numbers. Now, most quarterbacks should be good in play action. It's not something you can do every single snap because the defenses will pick up on that quickly. But doesn't Baker and Pete Carroll offense kind of fit well, right? Doesn't it feel like that would be a good mesh? Plus, Pete Carroll, to me, he doesn't really feel like a tanker. He is 70 years old. He's not signing up to tank so that he could probably either retire or get fired, and the next quarterback could inherit C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. So to me, I'm guessing Pete Carroll wants to go a little more aggressive this year, and if he feels he can get an improvement at the quarterback position, he'll be elbowing John Schneider, the GM up in the Northwest, saying, let's get Baker over Drew Lock. I mean, what is the conversation to be had here when you compare these two guys head-to-head? We've showed these stats before, but in case you haven't seen our recent episodes, I mean, come on, right? This is no-brainer here. Drew Lock, second-round pick for the Broncos, didn't work out. Just that plain and simple. Geno Smith, first-round pick for the Jets way back when, also did not work out. Plain and simple. Baker Mayfield is, without a doubt, better than Drew Lock, Geno Smith, and Sam Darnold. I know he's been ragged on, and he had a bad year last year, but that does not mean he is all of a sudden the worst quarterback of this foursome right now. Now, my big question mark is, what is the Seahawks' organization going to look like after the Russell Wilson era? Because they made some bad draft picks. They made a lot of bad moves that, in my opinion, the Russell Wilson Foundation makeup line covered up. And so now I kind of wonder, are we really going to learn if this organization is a good organization? Because to me, the Seahawks feel like they are a better oil-run machine than the Panthers. But maybe that was all Russell Wilson. And we're going to learn they're all idiots and frauds, and Russ was just amazing, and he dragged that team year after year to overachieving than what they had on their roster. So let's open this conversation up to you guys watching at home. Where will Baker end up? Seahawks or the Panthers? SEA for Seattle, CAR for Carolina. Let me know down below. I'll give my prediction in just a second, but I want you guys to weigh in as well. Where does Baker end up? I think Seattle. I know I'm a fraud, kind of, because I've said for a while Carolina, but after the latest reports that not only the Seahawks have a high level of interest in Baker Mayfield, but they're already thinking about extending him, at that point, just get him a house already in Seattle. Was it King County up there? Just get it done at this point, because the Seahawks, to me, they don't feel like an organization that's going to tank. They didn't trade DK Metcalf away. If they were going to tank, don't you think they would have sold DK to try and get some picks and just really reset hardcore? No. Ultimately, there was probably a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that happened between the front office and Russell Wilson. But if they believe that Baker Mayfield could be got, and maybe not for as much as it once cost back in March, I think it's going to be the Seahawks that ultimately walk away with Baker Mayfield. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hope you all have a good weekend. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Matthew Peterson, and I'll see you later this weekend with a Browns mailbag.